theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Hey, Suzy Wrong.
Hi, Warren. In today's movie, we see the blossoming of young love for our young protagonist. So I want to ask you, what were some of the lessons you learned in your first relationship all those years ago?
Don't have a relationship.
Just don't do it.
No, not at all. My first relationship, I don't know, Suzy. I learned, I was too young to learn anything. I didn't learn anything until my later relationships, I don't think. I was just a silly young university student, having fun. I thought I knew everything about relationships and I'd be really good at them, but no, not at all. I don't.
Yeah, so you thought you knew what you were getting yourself into, but
yes, I thought. But I wonder if I got into them because I was too scared of being alone. I was scared of myself. Just being alone, rather than going into them for the right reasons, and then all of a sudden you think, how old am I now? And now I know.
Was it a case of you having certain expectations and then discovering that, the reality is quite different?
I don't know. I think I probably went through school, not having, boyfriends or girlfriends or anything, and other kids did, and I kind of think it probably set me up for someone's interested. Quick, snap him up. I don't know. Yeah. I'm laughing because I just was I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. I just assumed that I'd be able to do it, and it's what I wanted. And I wasn't discerning in choosing who I was going to partner with. It was anyone.
So did you learn from that first relationship that you actually have to be quite discerning?
No, I think it probably took about 100 and then I got there.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely not the first one at all. No, not at all. What about you, Suzy?
I remember learning, I was a little bit unusual. My first relationship lasted 8 years, which is well done. Crazy. Well, I guess well done, but I could have learned more if I wasn't stuck with one person for that long. I guess because it was quite a serious relationship, I learned a lot of things. I think that the main thing I learned was that I went in kind of thinking a relationship has to look a certain way, has to feel a certain way, has to work a certain way, instead of kind of, working it out between two people, what your personality is like, what's my personality, what are the things I want in life, and how do we adopt to each other and make things work between the two. I was quite rigid, I think, and I was highly demanding, just so that the relationship looked like something that was ideal from an outside, from a conventional perspective. Do you know what I mean? But actually now I learned that, a lot of that doesn't matter. It's just a very personal thing between two people. But when you're young, it's very hard to know, I think.
Suzy, I feel like I learned a lot about my relationships through my friends. I had this pattern of attracting men who, I was a people pleaser. I'd sort of kind of, do anything to keep people happy. And I kept attracting a certain type of guy who, quite dominant. And it was my friends who pointed it out after a while and said, hey, we need to pull you up because this is happening and we're observing it happening. I'd be in a couple of relationships where they'd put me down in front of friends and they noticed it and said, this is not, but no, I'd brush it off like, I don't know, he's just being, silly or what have you. But it became a pattern. So I think I learned a lot about my relationships through those who were observing it.
So does it actually work when your friends tell you what they observe? Because sometimes you just have to sit back and shut up because the person's going to do what the person's going to do.
I think it got to a point where they did. They had to. It did a, what do you call it? Like a... They intervened. Yeah, an intervention. They did an intervention. It took a while for me to wake up to I'm not blaming others. Both of us came together, the wrong people coming together, the wrong attachment styles or whatever. It didn't work. But I didn't see the pattern because I was in it. And sometimes it takes someone outside to sort of notice it. That's where I think I learnt a lot more externally than anything else. Suzy, let's talk about the show. Now, there's a lot I want to say about it, actually. So let's talk about it. It's called This Is I. It's streaming on Netflix at the moment. What did you think of it, Suzy? Give us your review.
It is Osaka in the early 80s, and little Haruna Ai wants so bad to be a pop idol like the superstar Seiko Matsuda, which is nothing unusual for Japanese girls, except I was assigned male at birth. This is where the Netflix movie This Is I begins, and over the course of 2 hours, we watch the telling of the real-life story of a trans entertainer and celebrity, her journey from obscurity to fame, and her arduous experiences of coming out as trans at the end of the previous century. Ai's gender confirmation surgery took place in 1995, when she became Dr. Koji Wada's first patient of that nature. It was an underground and experimental procedure at a time when trans healthcare in Japan was virtually non-existent, but the success of Wada's first case led to more than 600 operations over the next 12 years, and the film is certainly deferential to Wada's contributions to trans lives in Japan. In fact, the film is a consistently earnest affair, and while there is some humor peppered throughout, there is no mistaking the very serious tone of something emerging from a culture that evidently still requires a lot of hand-holding when discussing issues around transness. For queer viewers, This Is I could be a little too predictable or even generic in how it frames a trans story, but that rudimentary quality of its explorations will very likely appeal to straight audiences. It may be a 2026 production, but there is something old-fashioned in the way it always feels like it is pleading for understanding and acceptance. We see Ai overcoming obstacles, but I would argue that there isn't enough emphasis on her personal grit or fighting spirit in a film that adheres to a traditional portrayal of women as gentle and meek. It is ultimately a story about triumph, but the protagonist seems like a tragic character for most of the duration. Nevertheless, the simplicity of This Is I makes it an easy watch, and it is definitely worth supporting considering the rarity of trans content from the East. Warren, so you like it more than I did, I think.
Look, you know what? I did. I didn't watch it alone, and we all loved it. You just said the word simplicity, and I think that was key in it. I found it a very significant movie to watch, and I want to start this conversation honestly. And, you know, as a gay man, I'm not going to pretend that I fully understand what it's like to be trans. You know, they're different experiences, but I do know what it feels like to be attacked, judged, mocked, or bullied simply for being who you are. And I know what it's like to grow up hearing that you are, you know, somehow wrong. And watching This Is I on Netflix really stayed with me because it stripped everything back, you know, beyond politics, headlines and outrage. It was just a human being, you know, trying to exist honestly in the world. And it also made me think about our own community. You know, we've spoken about this, Suzy, during the AIDS crisis, queer people came together because we had to. We understood what it felt like to be feared, targeted and dehumanised. And now, at a time when trans people are being attacked politically and socially all over the world, especially in the US, I couldn't stop thinking about that shift last night when I was watching it. You know, why are some people so threatened by others simply wanting to live as themselves? And what does it say about us? You know, Suzy, this film really felt like one of those moments where the noise falls away. Like you said, the simplicity, and you're left with humanity, the humanity of the person in front of you. I thought it was great. I really did. I loved it. Something shifted when I was watching this movie last night. And I thought, this is just so simple. I felt like everyone needs to watch it, and it'll just calm everyone down.
Maybe it's the vulnerability and the innocence of the character that makes it, that makes the simplicity of the story sing. To me, it all felt a bit like obvious, but obviously my perspective is very different. I feel like there is a lot more complexity to this kind of process of growing up trans, that the film kind of doesn't have scope for. You know, but obviously it's just a 2-hour film. You can't really, really encapsulate the entire experience. I do have a pet peeve of films being made by other people, for other people, because none of these people are trans. And to me, it's very obvious. Not that it's a bad way. It's just like so serious, you know, and I just don't feel like trans people talk about our lives in such a serious way. And it's just all these, like, even the actor who does a brilliant job, you know, as far as I can tell, they're all cis men and probably, you know, queer men. So there is a lot of empathy, but there is kind of a very monotonous weight to it that I didn't enjoy. I would have liked it to have more light and shade and more kind of surprising things, because when you live a queer life, a trans life especially, but I think any queer life, as you grow up, I think there are a lot of surprises that come around all the different corners, because nobody prepares you for a queer life like they do a straight life. So you kind of go through, you know, every decade of your life thinking, oh, I didn't expect this to happen. And the film doesn't have that. It just has a very straightforward, linear storytelling style that I thought made it a little bit like a children's movie. But you're right. I'm glad it spoke to you.
And there was, and maybe, you know, we're the audience for this movie, because everyone who watched it had the same feeling last night. Everyone was saying, wow, what is it about this movie? It's so simple, you know. And you know, they burst into song, and we were laughing our heads off and just really enjoying it. But at the end of it, we were all talking. We were talking about trans people. The conversation had started, and you know, it was hard watching it and not noticing that the people being attacked are often the people just trying to survive. And the louder the political noise gets, the easier it is to forget that there's a real person underneath it. And you know, when someone simply being themselves is causing outrage, it's probably says more about the outrage than it does about, you know, the person themselves.
Yeah, what's undeniable about the movie is that people are just trying to live their lives. She's not trying to do anything more than to live her lives and hopefully, you know, make her dreams come true. She doesn't worry about what other people are doing, yet everyone is worrying about what she's doing. And I think that's a very true part of trans lives. And, you know, I think all queer lives, like, we often think, like, why are people so invested when my life has got nothing to do with yours? So that part, I guess, it does the simplicity of the film does make that very clear.
And the simplicity, Suzy, as well, it's, you know, it enables us to see her as human. And I think it's harder to fear someone once you genuinely see them as human. And I feel like that's what the world needs. So I love its simplicity. Don't forget too, I mean, we're talking about Japan here, and I was surprised that it was coming out of Japan, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I didn't expect something like this.
I was watching it thinking, do we even have a film like that in Australia? You know, because I was there thinking, judging it, thinking, oh, why is it so basic? Why is it so, like, why does it speak in such a unsophisticated film language? I wanted something, you know, a little bit more arty, a little bit more sophisticated and complex. But then I'm thinking, well, this is a very simple message that needs to cut through to as many people as possible, and you know, that explains why the film is made that way. And I'm thinking, and this is Japan, this is Asia. You can't even really. No one has been able to get a film like that made even in Australia. So there is a lot to be said about that.
It feels quite human and simple. And I think when you look at the public conversation around trans people, it's loud and cruel. And I think this film just brings it back down, you know, to what is right at the core of it. And that is, you know, it's human. There's a human. And I don't know, you don't have to share someone's experience to recognise their humanity. I mean, the film didn't feel political at all to me when I was watching it. It felt human, and maybe that's why it's important. A message came in, Suzy, saying, so a basic film made by cis folks for cis folks. This is why it's good to have your two different lenses on things. And maybe that's it, Suzy. I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved it. It's called This Is I. It's streaming on Netflix. Suzy, we've got a banger of a Japanese song coming up, but before we do, what are we watching next week?
Staying on Netflix, but heading over to Thailand, we're checking out supernatural series Goddess Bless You from Death, featuring two gay policemen investigating spooky phenomena while falling in love with each other. The title again is Goddess Bless You From Death. That's on Netflix for When I See You next Tuesday. Bye bye.